In 1983, there was a video game crash that ruined the industry. There was absolutely zero quality control for games, so endless low-budget trash flooded the market, which led Atari, the leading game company of the time, to let go 30% of their 10,000 employees. Due to their excess stock of games, Atari buried over 728,000 cartridges at a landfill in New Mexico. Consumers lost faith in the industry, and it looked as though it was over for gaming as a whole. Until, seemingly out of nowhere, in 1985, a savior all the way from Japan came to the rescue. The NES breathed new life into the industry, and a single name became ingrained into every gamer's mind: Nintendo. They managed to bring the gaming industry back from the brink of death, and Nintendo was leading the charge into its most prosperous years yet. Nintendo is pretty awesome. They've made some of the most influential games and consoles of my life. A company that has been, and will likely always be, a mainstay in the gaming industry. The grandfather of modern gaming, and a pioneer of not just 3D games, but of so many integral parts of the industry today. Truly, without the many brilliant minds at Nintendo, the world as we know it would be very different. Their first console, released back in 1977 in Japan only, was the Color TV game system. While it did do very well, this was still the prehistoric age when it came to games, so pretty much the only games you could play on it were just different versions of Pong. Yeah, I'm glad I was born when I was. They would follow this by the extremely successful Game & Watch, released in 1980 as their first handheld console. By 1981, it had sold over 14 million units worldwide, and by the end of its life cycle, would reach 43.4 million units sold, helping Nintendo begin to make a name for themselves. But neither of these consoles would even come close to the numbers their following console would reach. In July of 1983, the Family Computer, or Famicom, would be released in Japan. It was meant to appeal to as wide of an audience as possible, as gaming still wasn't mainstream enough. By marketing the console as a family computer, it would hopefully sell to both gamers and non-gamers alike. This was when the crash struck, allowing for Nintendo to strike back. In 1985, the Famicom would be redesigned as the Nintendo Entertainment System, or NES, and sold in America following the same marketing strategies, attempting to appeal to family households as much as possible. The NES would go on to become one of the most influential gaming consoles of all time, outperforming every previous console. By the end of its life cycle in 1995, it had sold 61.9 million units worldwide, and is still the 13th best-selling console of all time. But it wasn't the console itself that sold so well, rather the immense library of iconic games to come out. The birth of legendary titles like Super Mario Bros. And Zelda were on this console, and the world went crazy for it. Nintendo became a superpower in the industry. Everyone wanted their hands on an NES. Even both of my parents had one when they were kids. They've told me stories of just how incredibly popular it was. How my mom had the original Super Mario Bros. And that she could beat the entire game and even knew certain shortcuts. This truly was the birth of modern gaming. Nintendo would go on to see success after success with the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, or SNES, in 1991, and eventually in 1996, the Nintendo 64. This was where their innovation truly took off. Super Mario 64 took an absolutely massive leap in graphical fidelity, being the first 3D game to feature a large open world to explore, and a revolutionary control scheme with the movable camera system used everywhere in games today. Ocarina of Time broke boundaries for not just the Zelda series, but in game design across the board. Even today, it is often regarded as the greatest video game of all time. Entering the 2000s, this was where my generation began. It started with the Game Boy and, of course, Pokemon. The Pokemania of the late 90s to early 2000s was huge. The brand grew far beyond anything they expected, and it didn't take long for Pokemon to grow even larger than Nintendo itself. Nintendo would continue to innovate year after year with the release of the GameCube, DS, Wii, and now the Switch. While still standing tall against their competitors Xbox and PlayStation to this day, it's apparent that something is different now. Things have changed. Nintendo has been faltering, and they aren't what they used to be. Public opinion has been dropping fast, and they seem to be becoming more and more corporate by the day, losing respect from even their biggest fans. But why is this? Why does Nintendo, a once beloved company, seem to be getting their name dragged through the dirt time and time again? Let's dive a little deeper. Back in 2022, the Smash World Tour, one of the biggest tournaments the Smash community had ever seen, with an over $250,000 prize pool, was cancelled by Nintendo just 2 weeks before it was meant to happen. An official statement from Smash World Tour came out saying that while they weren't given a cease and desist, Nintendo did tell them that they could not run their tournament without a license, and that they would not be receiving one. In other words, Nintendo threatened them into canceling without having to use force. While this really did suck for everyone involved, it hit even harder with how short notice it was. There have been many similar cases of Nintendo bringing the hammer down on many of their most dedicated fans. Many well-known and respected modding communities have been shut down, and YouTubers making videos on these mods or ROM hacks have had their videos demonetized or taken down by Nintendo. I could go on and on about how many absolutely insulting things Nintendo has done, but the point is, Nintendo is so incredibly stingy with their brands and IPs, to the detriment of their players. These are some of their biggest fans, running entire tournaments for their games because of how passionate they are. Many of the modders and ROM hack developers were inspired so much by Nintendo's games that they wanted to create something of their own. Of course, I am in no way saying piracy is good and you should all go pirate every Nintendo game possible, but there's a quote from Gabe Newell, the president of Valve, that fits so perfectly with Nintendo as of late. Piracy is almost always a service problem and not a pricing problem. There are hundreds of popular old Nintendo games that people want to play, but Nintendo offers no current way to acquire them. What makes things worse is the market for a lot of these games. One could simply go buy a physical copy of an older game, but depending on the game, they may just have to sell their soul and one of their limbs as well to get one. Let's look at Pokemon as an example. When many of the old DS games came out, they sold for around $35 to $40, a fair price for a handheld game and especially for the quality of these older games. Nowadays, thanks to many factors like nostalgia, the Pokemon card boom during 2020, and of course Nintendo's lack of redistributing these games, they will sell for hundreds of dollars more than the original price. As of July 2024, on eBay, Soul Silver is going for around $150, and that's just for the cartridge. If you wanted the case as well, that's going to be another $50, putting you at around $200 for a 15-year-old game. That is absurd! It's no wonder ROM sites pop up all the time for Nintendo games. If they simply made these games available on current hardware, it would drastically minimize the amount of pirated Nintendo games. Xbox has been highly praised for its backwards compatibility, with their newer consoles allowing players to play older games, even games from the original Xbox, with ease and for very cheap thanks to Game Pass. But Nintendo? They do have many retro games available to play through their online service, Nintendo Switch Online, or NSO, but it comes nowhere near Xbox. You have to pay an extra $30 for the premium version of NSO in order to even access these retro games, and even then they are extremely limited. The actual emulation for them is lackluster at best, as many games had big issues at launch, and some games still have frame drop issues. Easily the worst part of this is the drip feeding system they have, only releasing a small amount of games every year, forcing players to potentially have to wait years just to play a 10-year-old game that Nintendo might not even release. We'll talk more about just how bad NSO is later, but these same issues plague Nintendo's music as well. They still offer no official release of many of their games' soundtracks, and yet will actively take down videos and entire channels posting these soundtracks. This is just downright shameful. If they're gonna go as far to take down these music videos, then at least upload them yourselves. It's like when you're with your girlfriend and you want to get food, but she says she's not hungry, so you just get food for yourself, only to have her then steal some of your food. It's hypocritical. Now legally, yes, Nintendo is in the right for pretty much all of these issues, but that's not the problem. Every little thing, every little inconvenience is just another slap in the face to their fans. There are so many other game studios and companies that actually care for their fan base, encouraging modding and community-ran tournaments. Two massive studios, Bethesda and Valve, are known for how open they are to modding and letting their community take the game into their own hands. Compared to Nintendo, it's just so frustrating how much it seems like they just hate their fans. The whole Point Crow situation back in 2023 is a perfect example of this. He and several other YouTubers had a bunch of videos taken down due to infringement on Nintendo's terms of service. While it started with just taking down modded game content, it quickly reached even vanilla gameplay videos that were entirely within their terms of service, and yet still being taken down. The spread of enforcement with these terms of service is incredibly uneven, and very confusing as to what you can and cannot post. It's one thing to not allow modding, but they're so sloppy with taking down these videos, they're not even playing by their own rules. They're paying no mind to the fact that they're taking down vanilla gameplay videos. But an important question is, why are they even against modding in the first place? It, along with the many popular ROM hacks, are entirely non-profit, and only offer more enjoyment and self-expression for their community. Nintendo has truly fallen from grace in the eyes of the gaming industry, and sadly, it's not just their business practices either.
They said it wasn't humanly possible, but now you can have all the power and excitement of Nintendo right in the palm of your hand. Introducing Game Boy. It's portable, it's in stereo, and its games are interchangeable. Plus, Game Boy comes with the outrageous new game, Tetris. And for head-to-head competition, use the revolutionary video link and blow your opponent away. Game Boy, only from Nintendo. Now you're playing with power, portable power.
While they have consistently been improving and innovating with their consoles, there has been a noticeable drop-off in personality recently. But first, let's take a look at what made all these consoles so special. You used to be able to do so much with just the consoles themselves. The GameCube had a super fun little intro sequence, and would even change up if you held certain buttons while booting it up. The menu had this ethereal music, along with the cool sounds it would make as you navigated the menu. It added so much charm to the console and made it more than just a platform to play games on. The DS had the famous and incredibly addictive PictoChat, where you could draw and send notes to people nearby. I remember using this all the time with my sister, either at home in different rooms or during long car rides. While not very in-depth, it had some customization in its menu, allowing you to change the color. Then of course there was the Wii. The king of Nintendo consoles at the time, it stands today as the 7th best-selling console of all time, and 5th best-selling home console. It took that idea of making a console more than just a platform to play games on, and ran with it. So many cool features were on the Wii. The Mii channel, where I would spend hours making the most random Miis, has gotta be the most iconic feature. And speaking of iconic, the music was so good, I still have it deep rooted into my brain. From the menu theme to the shop music, to the little intro each game had at the start menu, the Wii was truly on another level. When I say the old consoles had personality, this is what I mean. The 3DS was just like the Wii, but portable. I'd even say it had more to do, and was extremely customizable compared to the original DS. You could use different themes that would change the menu sounds, music, and background, and it came with a bunch of pre-installed apps and games to mess around in. I remember spending a lot of time in the sound and camera apps as a kid, not to mention its own version of the Mii Channel, the Mii Plaza. The addition of Street Pass was one of the most genius ideas. I remember I went to Comic-Con back in 2015. Yeah, I got to see the Star Wars Force Awakens panel, and got hundreds of Street Passes. It was so cool seeing it fill up my plaza, and getting to play all the minigames like Find Me. This era of Nintendo was so enjoyable for me, but as time went on and the Switch was released, that spark Nintendo had started to go out. Now, don't get me wrong, when it comes to innovation, the Nintendo Switch is perhaps their best idea yet. The combination of handheld and home console was truly a billion-dollar idea, and their numbers prove it. As of 2024, the Switch has made over $77 billion and sold over 143 million units. It sits as the third best-selling console of all time, right behind the DS and PlayStation 2, and beating out both of its current competitors, the PS5 and Xbox Series X, by a long shot. The Switch simply as a concept was almost guaranteed to be a success, and along with its massive game library has helped it get there. But the console itself feels dry. It seems to have a lack of personality compared to its predecessors. In its menu, there's no music to be found, no special themes or backgrounds, only the options between black and white. The hardware is known to have many issues as well. The Joy-Cons can very easily get stick drift, causing the joysticks to drag across the screen without actually moving it. If it gets bad enough, it can make some games almost unplayable. Nintendo has apologized for this, offering free repairs, which is commendable, I'll give them that, but it doesn't change the fact that these controllers aren't very high quality. There was a lawsuit against the poor quality of Joy-Cons, essentially claiming that these controllers are prone to breaking and that Nintendo was selling defective products, which is very true. And even though Nintendo made a formal apology about it and promised improvements, they ended up winning the lawsuit and have continued to sell these defective controllers. Speaking of poor hardware, the power of the Switch has also been a major talking point. It is miles behind the power of the current Xbox and PlayStation. While it is a bit older than the PS5 or Series X, it still barely runs games like an Xbox 360. Naturally, as a hybrid console, it's gonna be less powerful than a normal home console. And yet, there's examples like the Steam Deck that are leagues more powerful than the Switch. At launch, the Switch's low power wasn't a big deal, but at 7 years old, you can really start to feel its age. It's gonna need an upgrade, soon. The Switch's online service, NSO, is just as sad. Nintendo has always been incredibly behind Xbox and PlayStation in this regard, which was fine as the main draw of a Nintendo console for a long time was its exclusive games, many of which are single player. But it was about time they caught up and made their own online service, which unfortunately didn't end up going very well. For $20 a year, which admittedly is a lot better than Xbox Live or PSN prices, you basically only get the bare minimum of just playing online with other people. You'd think after being 16 years behind Xbox Live, they would at least have a messaging or party system, but no. Perhaps it's because of Nintendo's family-friendly rule, but the only social feature is adding a friend to see what game they're playing. It's upsetting to a very social gamer like myself not to be able to have that same kind of community that exists on Xbox on the Switch. There's not even any bonus software to enjoy on the console. No PictoChat, no Flipnote Studio, not even a Mii channel. The only thing that seems to have saved the Switch is its games. The Switch might have had one of the greatest launches of any console, with Breath of the Wild, one of the most renowned games of all time, at the helm. It didn't take long for its library to grow even larger, and now has even more games than both the Series X and PS5 at over 10,000 games, both new and old. Many of Nintendo's IPs have had their best-selling games on the Switch, such as Zelda with Breath of the Wild and Mario with Mario Kart 8. Unfortunately, another one of these games is Pokémon Scarlet and Violet. Lots of Nintendo franchises have had their most critically acclaimed games on the Switch, but not all. Scarlet and Violet have tragically sold over 24 million copies, making them the third best-selling Pokémon games. The sheer lack of care put in these games is baffling. They simply were not finished, but were released anyways, only to receive incredible amounts of criticism and backlash. The sad thing is, Nintendo will likely see the numbers these games made and just force Game Freak to continue what they've been doing. I don't blame the developers for the game's rough edges, but management, whether within the Pokémon company itself or at Nintendo, is absolutely to blame. The speed at which these games are coming out is insane. From 2016 to 2019, a Pokémon game was released every year, and just in the span of a single year from 2021 to 2022, 3 whole games were released. It's getting tiring as a player just getting the same games with barely anything new each year, and I can only imagine what kind of time crunches these developers are working with. The results of this are best shown in their most recent games. While still fun gameplay-wise, they're so graphically poor and full of bugs. I fear we may never return to the days of peak Pokémon. But maybe there is hope. Regardless of how low Nintendo has gotten, they are still the most successful they've ever been. I really do want to believe they can turn over a new leaf, that they can return to form and win back their fans. They need to show that they value their communities and bring life back to their consoles. With the Switch successor on the horizon, anything is possible. Perhaps all of my complaints will be addressed, and maybe it will even be equal in power to its competitors. Rumors say that this new Switch will have a bigger, higher quality screen, better Joy-Cons, and all sorts of great features. Only time will tell. For their games, the future is incredibly bright. Mario continues to have phenomenal entries, with Odyssey at the beginning of the Switch's life, and now with Wonder being loved by fans. I'm excited to see what's next. Zelda has so much in store, coming off of what might just be their best entry yet. And even Pokémon seems to be taking a step back to reassess where they're at. With no Pokémon game releasing this year, and another Legends game on the horizon after how well received the first one was, we might just see some truly new and great ideas in the franchise. Animal Crossing New Horizons took over the world when it came out, and we are even getting Metroid Prime 4 after all these years of waiting. We are truly heading in the right direction. The unexpected savior of the industry, the talk of the town, and pioneer of new frontiers. This is the Nintendo I want to see again. A company that showed a true passion for gaming and innovation, one that put so much love and care into each and every console and game to create the best experiences possible. Here's to holding out hope for the Switch 2 and Nintendo's change of heart.
It's a first step into Unova, a region like no other, a place where the seasons change, and there's a new adventure at every turn. You can discover over 150 never-before-seen Pokémon as you explore the all-new Unova region. Start from a new beginning. Pokémon Black version and Pokémon White version only for Nintendo DS systems. Rated E for everyone.
As of now, fans still have a bad taste in their mouth thanks to Nintendo's recent controversies. Slowly but surely, they are becoming more hated than even the likes of EA or Activision, which is saying a lot. What do I want to see? Well, more of an effort to connect with their fans, to listen to their communities. It seems like they really don't care about what their fans in the West think, and that needs to change. I want to see the same kind of personality in the new consoles that we saw with the Wii or the 3DS, to be less stingy about their games and letting players play them the way they want. Encourage modding, encourage tournaments and competitive play. It all comes down to greed. So many studios today are blinded by their hunger for money and have lost what made them so great in the first place. The love and passion you could feel when playing those games is lost now. Nintendo is not your friend. No big gaming company is your friend. But those who work on these games are still people, and they love games just as much as we do. They can still create incredible things for gamers around the world to enjoy. Maybe, just maybe, one day we will once again get to see the true Nintendo. The Nintendo that did better. Thanks for watching, and also thank you guys so much for 1,000 subscribers. I did not expect to reach 1,000 this quickly, so thank you guys, it really does mean a lot. As always, if you guys did enjoy, be sure to leave a like and subscribe and turn on that bell if you want to see more of me. Feel free to leave a comment and give your own take on this whole Nintendo situation. My name is Ember, and I'll see you next time.